Hello and welcome to Cinnabar Collectibles, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most dominant decks in the format, Dragapult EX. Now this deck came second place at the Atlanta Regionals, but not only did it come second, it also came third, fourth, fifth and sixth, taking up 5 spots of the top 8, which makes this deck incredibly brutal right now. Now we're going to talk about the deck that came first on another day, but for now let's get into this Dragapult EX deck. So to build Dragapult EX, first of all we're going to start with 4 Dreepies. Then we're going to be using the engine of this deck, 4 Dracloaks, and it's the recon directive which makes this deck so good, because once per turn we get to look at the top 2 cards of our deck, we then get to choose one to put into our hand and the other one goes at the bottom of our deck, meaning that if you get 2, 3 or even 4 of these out, you get to be drawing 4 extra cards, but not only that, but you get to choose 4 cards of your choosing from the top of your deck, which is incredible. Then we come to the incredible Dragapult EX, and it's the Phantom Dive which makes this so good. So it's 200 damage, but then you get to put 6 damage counters on your opponent's bench Pokemon in any way you like, meaning that you can take knockouts off the bench or you can start weakening things down so that you can do 3 or 4 prize turns, which is incredible. Then this deck runs 2 Duskulls, 2 Dusclops with the Curse Blast ability, which means that you can blow this up, your opponent gets a prize, but you get to put 5 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like, helping you again take more than 2 prizes per turn, 3 or 4, by damaging that bench. Then we're going to be running 1 Dusknoir, and with his Curse Blast ability, your opponent gets to take a prize, but you get to put 13 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, meaning that you can do 130 extra damage per turn, and with Phantom Dive doing 200, you're knocking out most Pokemon then. You're knocking out Charizards, you're knocking out other Dragapults as well, which is incredibly useful. Then you want to be running 2 copies of Budew, and it's that Itchy Pollen attack which stops your opponent being able to use item cards for a turn. Now Budew is fantastic. Let's say you've not got much going on in your hand, you've only got 1 Budew, you've got a Dreepy, you're praying that you're going to draw into a Dracloak or a supporter that will help you. Budew will help you slow down the game, taking control of what your opponent can do each turn, meaning it buys you extra turns. And that's why Budew is so useful. And in fact, there were some fantastic games at the Atlanta Regionals where it was a Budew off. It was Budew versus Budew on many occasions. Next up, we have the Pheasantipity EX with that fantastic Flip the Script ability, which means that once per turn, if your Pokemon was knocked out last turn by your opponent's Pokemon, you get to draw 3 cards. Now I couldn't find the next card, but Blood Moon Ursaluna EX is also very useful in this deck. It's got the same sort of ability as Radiant Charizard, but this time it's called Seasoned Skill, and it means that for every prize card your opponent has taken, the cost of the attack is less. So for example, if they take a 1 prize card, it costs 1 less. So this is fantastic for a late game attacker. So we'll be using this late on to take an easy victory near the end. The next Pokemon you'll need is Howlucha, and it's his ability Flying Entry which makes him so useful in this deck. When you put him down, you get to do 1 damage to 2 Pokemon on your opponent's bench, which means if we've got Dragapult dropping 6 damage counters onto the bench, it makes Howlucha incredibly useful, because Howlucha is putting that 1 on, and in a meta where most basic Pokemon have 70 HP, you're knocking them down to 60, which means that Dragapult gets to finish them off. For example, Charmanders have 70 HP, which means that Howlucha will knock him down to 60, and then Dragapult can finish him off on the bench. Ralts, which again, you'll see hopefully in a future video about that first place deck, will be knocked down to 60, and then getting finished off by Dragapult. And we don't see much of the Chien-Pao deck at the minute, but here's Frigibax. Again, he can get knocked down from 70 to 60, letting Dragapult finish him off. But now let's get into the supporters. So we'll need 4 copies of Iono, which will help us cause a bit of disruption to our opponent's hand. Then this deck is running 2 Professor's Research, and if you watch the Atlanta Regionals, you'll see there are occasions where Dragapult does brick, and they're finding it difficult. Now Professor's Research is a great way to get rid of your hand, draw 7 cards, hope to get that Dracloak and get the whole game rolling. Then we're going to be running 2 Arven, which lets us search for an item card and a Pokemon tool. Then you'll want 2 copies of Jacques. Now Jacques is really useful in this deck. Let's say you've got 3 Dreepies and you're just searching for the Dracloak, you want a Dracloak to get the deck going. Jacques will help you grab 2 evolution Pokemon. And because there's 2 copies, you can then grab 2 Dracloaks or a Dracloak and a Dragapult, and then hopefully start attacking and get rid of your opponent's bench. We're also going to be running 2 Boss's Orders to let us gust up one of our opponent's Pokemon. We're then running 4 Buddy Poffins, which lets us search our deck for 2 basic Pokemon with 70 HP or less. And we're also running 4 Ultra Balls to let us discard 2 cards and find any Pokemon we want from our deck. We're going to be running 3 Night Stretchers in this deck in case we've had to use Professor's Research, and we've had to discard some Dracloaks or some Dreepies or some Dragapults. We can then pull them back out of discard with Night Stretcher. This deck is also running 3 Counter Catchers, which means if you're behind on prizes, you get to switch your opponent's active Pokemon with one of their bench Pokemon. Again, you can use this. Let's say you've done 200 damage, maybe their Pokemon's only got 60 HP left. Swap it with something on the bench. Now you can knock out their active for 2 prizes, and then the one on the bench again for 2 prizes, making a 4 prize turn. We're running 1 copy of Nespal to get either the Blood Moon Ursaluna or the Fezandipity out. We're running 1 copy of Earth in the Vessel, so we can discard 1 card to draw 2 energies from our deck. Only 1 copy of Rare Candy, because in all honesty, we're not in a rush to get into Dragapult. If we can use our Dracloaks and keep searching for our deck, getting all the cards we need, so that's why we only have 1 Rare Candy in this deck. We've also got 1 copy of Switch, and we're running 1 copy of Unfair Stamp, which means that if your opponent has knocked out one of your Pokemon during your turn, you both shuffle your hands into your deck, your opponent only gets to draw 2 cards, and you get to draw 5, which can really put them into a bad situation that they've got to play out of. We're also then running 1 Rescue Board, which reduces the retreat cost of our Pokemon by 1, meaning because Dragapult has a retreat of only 1, he then gets to retreat for free. And we've got a Luxurious Cape, which I was seeing used a lot on the Budoos at the Atlanta Regional, which gives your Pokemon an extra 100 HP, and it was very useful in the Budoo versus Budoo battles that I was seeing, where they were item knocking their opponents. However, if yours gets knocked out with the Luxurious Cape, your opponent gets to take an extra prize, meaning that Budoo was then worth 2 prizes. Then we get to our energy. We'll be running 3 copies of Fire Energy and 3 copies of Psychic Energy. And that is the Dragapult EX deck. It's an incredible deck right now, which is dominating the format. Will you be building this deck? Let us know in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you again for watching Cinnabar Collectibles. We'll see you in the next video. Good night.